DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in. You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is boss requirements. Any of you who is a boss, or you have heard people talk about being a boss, or you plan on one day being a boss, or maybe right now you are not the boss, but you have a boss and you want to fire that boss so that you can be the boss because you think you can do a better job, or you at least hope or are willing to bet that you can do a better job than your current boss. A lot of people talk about this these days because a lot of people want to be in charge of their own destiny. They want to call their own shots. They want to make their own schedules and do things as you wish to do them. And I completely understand that desire. And the good thing is, for anyone with that thought process, is that there are more opportunities to do this these days than there have ever been. There's more chance to do something like this than ever, to be your own boss. And a lot of people are going straight into this without ever really working, at least not in a professional sense, for a boss. People are going straight to this from the beginning. Some of you have kids who are growing up wanting to be a streamer or a YouTuber or a TikToker and never working a traditional job, which is not necessarily a bad idea. And at the same time, there are still requirements for anyone who wants to step into the boss position in your own life and in your professional life, in your personal life and your professional life, before you even start engaging with being a boss of anyone outside of just yourself. So today, let's talk about what those requirements are, and understand that these things I'm going to talk about they apply rather to parenting, they apply to business, they apply to any type of leadership position that you may step into. Point number one, today's topic once again is boss requirements. Number one, hold yourself to a higher account than anyone else holds you. If you're going to be a boss, you must hold yourself to a high level of internal personal accountability. Do not misinterpret this point as to think it means that you are supposed to do everything on your own, or that you're supposed to be a lone wolf and not have other people around to help keep your iron sharp. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you want to position yourself to where your level of internal accountability is higher than any level of external accountability for someone else would have imposed upon you. Now, in other words, you are holding yourself to the strictest disciplines if you're going to be a boss. Now, why does this matter? Because before anyone else can check you on any slippage, you should have caught it first. This is before I get to why does this matter. You should have caught it first and done something about it, because you're holding yourself to a standard by which you demand yourself to perform and show up. And because you're doing this before anybody else knows, you already know when you're slipping. You already catch the slippage first and you fix it before anybody else catches it. Or if they do catch it, you're already in the process of fixing it by the time they see it. I once heard Michael Jordan say that he held himself to a certain standard of performance and accountability that was so high that not only did he not need anyone else to ever hold him accountable, but also that as long as he was meeting his own standards, none of his alleged competitors were ever going to be his measuring stick. And one of the reasons that Michael was able to do what he did is what he was doing there is what I've described as going over the top of the problem. So instead of looking at all his competitors and saying, how can I be better than him, and trying to be better than all the people around him? Instead, what Michael was doing, and maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously, I would guess subconsciously, is he's holding himself to a certain standard for himself. And by reaching his own personal standard, it automatically put him above all his competitors. So he didn't have to look at the competitors and figure out, how do I beat each of these guys? He just said, let me be the best version of myself. And by doing that, that automatically made him better than everyone else. Now, to be clear, this depends on what vehicle you're in, your level of skill, your natural inclinations and talents. If you hold yourself to the standard of being the best possible version of yourself, it is possible that the best possible version of you might not be good enough to beat everybody. And that will happen because not everybody's going to be Michael Jordan. Not everybody's Michael Jordan in what they do. Even if you were the maximized version of you, you are not going to necessarily be the best in the world at the thing that you're doing, regardless of how hard you try. This is why choosing the right vehicle matters. This is why knowing your natural aptitudes and skills and where your abilities best fit also matters. And I would say if you are the best version of yourself and you do the best that you could possibly do and you get defeated by someone else who is simply better than you at the thing, then you can walk away with your head held high knowing that you gave your best effort. But knowing that you did not give your best effort and you have not held yourself to your highest possible standard, well, that's when you could be personally disappointed at what you did regardless of the outcome. Legendary UCLA basketball coach John Wooden, who won 11 championships, I believe, in maybe 13 years. It was some crazy number like that. His college basketball teams were dominant for more than an entire decade in the 60s and into the 70s. One of the things that John Wooden would tell his players before and after games is that the only way you know if you were actually a winner in the game today is by your own personal standard of did you give the best effort you could possibly give. And the reason why John Wooden would say that to his team, and the reason that I'm bringing it up is because John Wooden, when you dominate in college sports, for those of you who don't follow college sports, often you just have a team that is just so much better talent-wise and skill-wise than the teams you play against that is not even a real competition. Meaning you know that your team is going to win just on your talent advantage alone, even if your team doesn't give their best effort or doesn't really play that great of a game. You're just so much better than your opponents. That does not happen at the professional level where I'm talking about someone like Michael Jordan, but it does happen at the collegiate level where there are a lot more players, the talent is a lot more spread out, and then in the places where the talent is concentrated, you can have so much talent on one roster that, again, you'll beat some of these other teams in your sleep. John Wooden's team was that good that they could beat other teams in their sleep. So John Wooden needed a way to motivate his players that went above and beyond did we win the game? Because sometimes they were playing games that they were going to win no matter what they did. So he needed to tell his players something that would get them to give their best effort regardless of what it said on the scoreboard, because again, sometimes the scoreboard was going to say what it was going to say no matter what they did. And this is, did you give your best possible effort personally? And if you did that personally, then you can say, I had a great game today, regardless of whether you won or if you won. If you gave a shitty effort and lost, a shitty effort and won, that doesn't mean that you won that day because you didn't give the best effort that you could, which is hurting you more than it's hurting anybody else. So as I said with Michael Jordan, his own measuring stick for himself was higher than that of any of the players he was playing against and had to defeat. So he beat them by not even trying to beat them. He did the thing without trying to do the thing. By beating himself, he beat everybody else. And I would suggest that even if you may not be Michael Jordan at the thing that you do, I suggest you still operate by the same principle. Let me just give the best effort that I can give, do the best version of me, set my own standard so high that nobody else needs to hold me to an account that's higher than to which I hold myself. And whatever ends up happening from that, you can be happy with it because you know you gave your best. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is boss requirements. If you're going to be a boss, these are the things you have to do. Number 2, be willing to stand and walk alone. Be willing to stand and walk alone. There is a saying out there that it is lonely at the top. Well, depending on whom you ask, that could be true. It could not be true. But I will tell you one thing that is true is that there are fewer people at the top. It ain't always necessarily lonely. It depends on what you mean by lonely. It's a relative term. But there are fewer people at the top than there are at the bottom. That we can all agree on. So you have more elbow room, more space to stretch out your legs when you get to the top if you get there. So if you're going to be a boss, you got to be willing to operate alone because you're going to have to do things that most people are generally uncomfortable with, unwilling to do, and maybe just not capable of doing. Go back to the example I just gave you. Michael Jordan, when he was playing, John Wooden's UCLA basketball teams, when they were out there dominating, they had players such as Bill Walton, who you may have heard of, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who all of you have heard of. These players were much better than their competition for several reasons. Some of it was natural inclination, and some of it was just what they were willing to do to make themselves and to keep themselves being as good as they were. Listen to these things I just described. When you're going to be a boss, you're going to have to do some things that other people are uncomfortable doing, such as, keeping to the sports theme, there are athletes out there that are willing to do certain levels of training that their competitors are not willing to do. Kobe Bryant is a player who is well known for being a very tenacious hard worker when it came not only to working within the team concept, but also working on his own game. I remember reading Kobe saying, it might have been a video of him saying, this is around that 2008 through 2010 period, which was probably the peak of, a lot of Kobe's career was the peak of him being him. But I think that 2008 to 2010 time period really solidified the legendary status that Kobe Bryant now enjoys, even though he has passed, because his team went to the NBA Finals. The LA Lakers was in the NBA Finals 3 years straight, 2008, 2009, 2010, winning the championship in both 2009 and in 2010. But around that time period, I remember hearing Kobe talk about how he would do conditioning workouts in the off season. And I saw a video of him going to the track and actually doing conditioning workouts. So basketball players, if you're playing basketball, you need to be doing some conditioning training, not just stuff you do on the court with the ball, but stuff without the ball, such as lifting weights, conditioning. And if you're serious about basketball, you probably already know that. But Kobe would go to the track and do conditioning. And he said, I remember having days in the summer coughing up blood during my conditioning workouts. And why would he be coughing up blood? Because he would push himself so hard in doing whatever conditioning he was doing that his body was starting to react to the level to which he was pushing himself. Now, I'm not saying you need to go cough up blood based on your workout, but what I am saying is that we can all agree Kobe Bryant was pretty damn good. And he was very well conditioned because for 82 games a season, he was the main focal point of the other team. The other team knew that to beat this team, the Lakers, we got to beat and stop this guy, Kobe. And their whole game plan was around how do we slow this guy down? And he was still able to impact the game. Going back to Michael Jordan, one of the things he talks about is in sports they call it making the leap. The leap is about that jump you take from being a good player to being a superstar player. And Michael Jordan described the leap as exactly what I just described, is that every team comes in the game focused on stopping you because they know you're the best player. So to beat your team, they got to beat you. And even though every team is focused on stopping you, you still find a way to have a positive impact on the game for your team, and you end up winning most of the time anyway. That's the leap. And the leap is much more mental than it is physical. And the thing that I just mentioned about Kobe Bryant doing those conditioning workouts, the reason he was able to physically do the conditioning workouts is because he had mentally decided that this is what I'm going to do to separate myself from my opponents. Do you understand? The physical follows the mental, not the other way around. So what are people uncomfortable doing? What are people unwilling to do? Usually those are the same thing. When people are unwilling to do things, probably because it somehow, some way makes them uncomfortable, but they are not necessarily incapable. They may be incapable, but a lot of times they're not incapable, especially at the professional level. Anything that you do professionally, most of your peers are capable of doing the things that you may be doing. If you're a person who does extra work, you're a person who shows up early and stays late, you're a person who makes 10 phone calls and everybody else only makes 5, you're the person who goes the extra mile, as they say. Your coworkers and your peers, they are not incapable of going the extra mile the way that you did. They just don't want to. They're just not willing to do it. And that's okay. You should be not even necessarily happy, but this is the big difference oftentimes when it comes to the people who end up in leadership positions and those who do not, is that they are willing to go the extra mile that other people are simply not willing to go. And what makes you a boss is the fact that you are willing to do it when other people are aware of what's available to them, but they simply don't want to do it. I talk about this in my book, The Third Day. If you don't have your free copy of that book, you can get it at thirddaybook.com. The third day is all about showing up and giving your best effort when you least feel like it. It's about giving that effort in times when you really don't feel like giving an effort because you just don't maybe have the energy, you don't have the inclination, you don't have the motivation, if you will. Everyone who is listening to me right now is very aware of this concept of there being times when you don't really feel like doing the job, but you are supposed to be doing the job. And every one of you is aware that in those moments, if you can push yourself or prepare yourself to do the job anyway, even though you don't really feel like doing the job, that'll separate you from everybody else who ends up not doing the job when they don't feel like it. Every one of you who's listening to me is very aware of everything that I just said. None of this is news to any of you. The third day is all about doing it rather than just talking about it. It's an open secret, as we said. It's not really a secret because everybody knows about it, but it is a secret because very few people execute on it, even though everyone knows about it. That's what the third day is about. And being a boss is often about that. A lot of being a boss is what I just described. It's not that you know things that other people don't know. All right. If you play basketball, any of you who's a basketball player or basketball fan or basketball coach or trainer, etc., every one of you listening to me is familiar with the concept of doing conditioning drills to get yourself in better shape for playing basketball. Is there a basketball player or coach or trainer listening to me who never considered that until I brought it up a couple minutes ago? The answer is no. All of you have considered that. All of you know exactly what it is. All of you know exactly how it works. Now, here's the question. Think back to, if you're not playing anymore, think back to when you were playing. Or if you're a coach or a trainer, think of the players who you coach and train. Or if you play right now, think of yourself and or your teammates and peers and ask yourself, how many players do you know or have you known, or you yourself look in the mirror, how much conditioning did you do on your own volition when you were playing? There you go. And I played basketball. I know how many players I knew of who would do conditioning on their own volition. Answer is very few. Answer is very few. I told this story in one of my articles. I don't know if I haven't mentioned it here on the show. I probably have. But neighborhood that I come from, there was only one guy in the neighborhood who ended up going to the NBA. And he actually wasn't even from our neighborhood, but he had family in the neighborhood, so he would be around a lot. His name was John Salmons. And John was actually from, I heard him on an interview a couple of years ago. He's older than me, so this is after he had retired from basketball. And I believe, because in the interview, this guy, he was like interviewing people from Philly. And John Salmon said he was from, I think he said Fishtown. There's a town in Philadelphia called Fishtown. I think that's where John said he was from. Because the guy asked him, what neighborhood are you from? He said Fishtown. He did not mention my neighborhood, which is called Mount Airy. We also call it Uptown. He didn't mention Uptown or Mount Airy. He said Fishtown. But I give him credit because he was around a lot. When I was first starting to play basketball in the neighborhood, I would see him around often. One time I would see John, one place I would see John was, the only place actually, was at the playground. I never saw him anywhere else. I only saw him at the playground. Either playing for the local recreational teams or at the park working on his game on the outdoor courts. And I would be out there too. So he kind of knew my face, even though we didn't actually know each other, because he was several years older than me and many levels above me as a player, at least at that time. And John, one time I was at the park, middle of the day I'm recording this right now, it's 12:30 in the afternoon, Eastern. And it would be around this time I would be outside when I was 14, 15 years old at the park in Philadelphia practicing. And this is a time when you can have the court to yourself because it's so hot in the middle of the summer in Philadelphia. Nobody wants to be out on concrete playing basketball. It's too damn hot. Well, I was out there and John Salmons would be out there. And I saw him practicing on one court. I go practice on another court. And of course, because he was the best player in the neighborhood, I would sometimes take glances down at his court to see what he was doing. And there was 2 full courts at this playground. It's called Finley Playground where I grew up playing. And he would be on one full court, I'm on the other full court. And one day I saw him do something I never saw a basketball player do. I've seen a lot of players who were better than me. I've never seen a player do this. What he did was he put the basketball down and he went to the baseline, which is the kind of the out of bounds line in basketball. And he started doing sprints up and down the basketball court. And everybody knows what a sprint is, even if you don't play basketball. It's a form of conditioning that I knew what it was because I had done it before, because anytime you play on a basketball team, the coach has the players do conditioning drills. That's a normal thing. Sprints up and down. Some people call them suicides. Some people call it running lines. All kinds of conditioning drills. Just basically a different combinations of running up and down the court as much as you can just to get yourself winded and to build up your conditioning so that when you get in the game and you have to run up and down the court, you don't get tired as quickly. That's the whole point. And I never seen a player do conditioning stuff for basketball without a coach making them do it. I never saw someone do it voluntarily. He was the first player I ever saw do that. And in all my years playing basketball, I don't remember seeing another player do that. Now, after I saw him do it, I started doing it. I didn't do it that same day, copying him. But later on, as I got better at basketball and I started to understand the value of conditioning, plus I started to understand by the law of contrast, most of my peers didn't do any conditioning. So I realized that if I get in better physical condition than them, then when we play in the game, I can beat them just off conditioning alone. I can beat them just off energy, because when they start to get tired, they start missing shots. They play less defense. That's when I can take advantage of them and beat them. Even if they're a better player than me, I can beat them because I'm in better shape. So I started doing a whole lot more conditioning myself after I saw John doing that. And as I got older, again, it became a major part of what I did. And as a matter of fact, my book, Work on Your Game, the first chapter of the book is called Mental Conditioning, because it's all, I call it that. It's called Cardio for Your Mind, but it's all about mental conditioning. And I explain this concept of conditioning, what it's all about. It's not about the fact that you don't get tired. It's about that you get tired less. You get tired slower than everybody else, and you can recover a lot faster. The whole point being, are you willing to do things that everybody else is not willing to do? Again, not incapable of doing. They just are not willing to do it because they just don't want to do it, because it's not fun. It's not easy. It's not sexy. Is there something fun, easy, or sexy about doing conditioning drills in basketball? No. This is the reason why most of the time when you play basketball, the coach has to make players do conditioning. No player would do conditioning if the coach wasn't telling them to do it. Now, you send a basketball player to the basketball court and say, practice basketball. What are you going to see him doing? You're going to see him dribbling around. You're going to see him trying to dribble like Kyrie Irving and dunk like LeBron James and do moves like Kobe Bryant and shoot threes like Steph Curry. You're never going to see a basketball player put the ball down and just do sprints up and down the court on their own volition. Very rarely does it happen. So any of you basketball folks out there know of a player who does this on their own. That player is probably an exceptional player compared to their peers. And any of you who is a player, you will probably be an exceptional player compared to your peers. If you had the mindset to even think of doing this, I don't even have to know what your game skill is. If you have the mindset to even think of doing this, you're probably thinking of doing other things that your peers aren't willing to do as well. This is one of the things that makes you a boss. is willing to do these things. You're willing to take steps that other people are aware of and they know they are available to them, that they simply won't do it. The boss is the one who's willing to do what everybody else is not willing to do. There's a song, one of my favorite songs by 50 Cent, who's my favorite rapper still to this day, even though he hasn't made music in a long time. He has a song called, actually the song is called I'll Still Kill. I forget about the name of the song. But in the first verse of the song, one of the things that he says is, that's why I'm the general. I do what they pretend to do. And that's the idea that I'm getting across to you here in this point, is that you're willing to do things that other people, again, know about, they ain't doing. It's not because you're supremely talented, not because you are more gifted than everybody else. It's not because you have been touched by God in any way, shape, or form. It's because you are proverbially willing to get comfortable being uncomfortable. All of you have heard that before. You're willing to operate in spaces in which other people get so uncomfortable that they're not willing to stay in the discomfort. All of us know what discomfort feels like. The question is, how long are you willing to stay with it, with the belief that this discomfort is a form of eustress. Eustress is the inverse of distress. Distress is negative stress that makes you feel worse. Eustress is positive stress that may hurt in a moment, but you enjoy it and you stay with it because you believe it's going to make you better. And eustress is a real word, which means when you're willing to deal with this stress in a positive way, you will have fewer peers. Often you will have fewer friends. You'll have fewer people around you when you're doing these things because, again, everybody else wants to stay away from them. So if you are more attached to the connection to the group or attached to having a lot of people around you, you may not be ready to step into a boss position because bosses usually are at the top of the pyramid alone, whereas the stragglers and the everyday people are at the bottom of the pyramid with a whole lot of company. So are you willing to stand by yourself in these situations? Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is boss requirements. Number 3, temporarily sacrifice security and in exchange for freedom and autonomy. A temporary sacrifice of security in exchange for freedom and autonomy. Security and freedom are inverses of each other. I've talked about this before, in that you have to give up some or a lot of one in order to get the other. For example, if you work at a job right now, you have a paycheck coming every 2 weeks. Usually you can pretty much depend that check is coming. That direct deposit is going to hit. So the security of that paycheck, what do you pay in order to get that? What you pay is you give up a little bit of your freedom or a lot of your freedom when it comes to how you operate at work, what time you get to work, what you get to talk back to, what you get to choose to do or choose not to do. There are a lot of things that if you receive a paycheck every 2 weeks, you have to do at your job in order to keep that check coming, that if you had your own choice, you probably wouldn't do it. You probably would not work from 9 to 5. If you could work from 10 to 3, you would probably do it. But because the job says you got to work from 9 to 5 to keep getting the check, you want the check, you show up and you do the job. I'm sure everyone listening to this who has employment and you have a check coming every 2 weeks, you are doing things that you don't really want to do. Why? Because somebody's forcing you to do them because of the job. That if you didn't have to do them, you wouldn't do them. But you do because you get the check. That is an example of trading freedom, being doing what you want to do, for security, being you have that money coming in. On the flip side, the freedom of being your own boss and owning your own business, well, guess what? You got to pay for that. You got to give the security of how much, or knowing that a paycheck is coming, let alone how much it's going to be. There might not be a paycheck when you start your own business. You might go months with no paycheck because you haven't made any money yet. You haven't made any sales yet. So you have freedom. You can do whatever you want. Show up whenever you feel like it. You're the boss. Nobody tells you what to do. You don't have to wear a uniform. You ain't got to report to the office. You don't have to answer anyone. But in order to have that freedom, you got to give up the security. So there's no such thing as getting something for nothing, ladies and gentlemen. Remember the third law of economics. There are no free lunches. The cost of being the boss is that you had to give up some of the security and protection that comes with being covered by the boss. Do you understand? When you have security and protection, that means there is someone with more authority than you covering you and protecting you. That's usually the boss or the job itself. When you are the boss, you are expected to cover and protect others, which means nobody is covering and protecting you. So if you're okay with that, then you can step forward into being a boss. If you're not okay, I suggest you stay away. All that said, let's recap today's topic, which is boss requirements. A lot of people are looking for ways to be their own bosses. I work with a lot of people and talk to a lot of people who right now are not their own bosses, but they want to become their own bosses because either A, they see the writing on the wall in their current situation, or B, they're on their way out of that situation on their own volition, or C, they just see that being in a situation where they're not the boss is not working out the way they want it to work out, and they're looking for alternatives. So if you want to be the boss, here are 3 things you need to do. Number 1, hold yourself to a higher account than anyone else holds you. You must be held to a higher standard internally in the mirror than anybody else is holding you. All right, that's what makes you a boss, number 1, because that way you can hold others accountable because you hold yourself accountable and they can see it. Number 2, be willing to stand and walk alone. When you're a boss, you're doing things that other people either think about doing, dream about doing, pretend to be doing, but are ultimately unwilling to do. Not because they're incapable, but simply because they choose not to. What makes you a boss is that you're willing to do things that other people don't want to do. Number 3, temporarily sacrifice security in exchange for freedom and autonomy. And that temporary amount is arbitrary. All right, temporary could be a year, could be months, could be several years. All right, how long are you willing to go without security and protection in exchange to have your freedom? Remember, ladies and gentlemen, there is no such thing as a free lunch. If you want to be completely free, you got to pay for it. Freedom is not free. There's a cost. And I just told you what it is. You want to be a boss, now you know what you need to do. All that said, you're ready to step into being a boss, and you need to get your mind in the right space. You need to have a clear strategy. You want to make systems that can take care of things consistently and predictably and consistently, and you want to be held accountable. You want to make sure that accountability is in place, not only for you, but also for your processes and your systems to be implemented fully. With me as your coach, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com, have me as your direct coach, and we can get to work on this, ASAP. Workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all